Hi. Today we're gonna dive into the basics of a house music track. The thing is, nowadays saying how to make a house track is basically like saying how to make music, because there are so many subgenres of house. What I call house music may be completely different to what you call house music. To avoid any confusion, this is what we are aiming for with this video. As you should know, the first step is getting some appropriate samples to use. For this, I'm gonna browse sample focus and see what I can find. If you wanna find similar sounds, this is what I look for. We can jump into Ableton now. It may look like my hair is covering my ears, but it's not. This song is going to have a very basic structure of intro, drop, bridge, drop. You are gonna keep it very simple. So, how do we start? Well, when I don't have a clear idea, I usually go for drums, because that way we have a rhythm going that can inspire us to come up with a melody or a bass line. If you have a melody in your head, if you wanna go first for a bass line, whatever works for you, go. If you have your samples, what you have to do is just place a drum rack here and drag all of your samples into the drum rack. I already did. This is all of my samples. Lucky for us, house drums can be very simple. Like, we can get something very simple that sounds like house. Why? Because if we create a MIDI clip, you just place a kick on every first beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 to the floor kick. Believe it or not, this is house music. How do we continue? Well, just place a clap on every second hit. Maybe a better clap. Doesn't this sound like house? One last thing, hi-hat. The same as we did with the kick is 4 to the floor, but off beat. I mean, instead of placing the hat here, we just do it here, against the kick the whole time. That's basically it. It can be maybe a closed hat. After we have the offbeat, play with closed and open hi-hat. So one thing that works on house music that might not work well in other genres is a function of Ableton that maybe you don't use that much: groups. So in Ableton, this group feature allows us to apply rhythmic variations to our MIDI and audio clips, so we can give it a little bit more of a human feel. So let's see how this works in this case. We have these groups placed. Let's try this group called Disco Like Swing. We drag this down to the clip, and you can see that this group section likes up, you just drop it. You can see that we have it here. If you don't see this group name thing, this group options thing, I'm gonna show you how the button looks in older versions of Live, so you know where to click. Let's hear how it sounds. Let's change this to 1/8. You see the difference. With 1/8, what we are doing is like changing the way it quantizes. If we add other elements, we can add exactly this same group. This makes it sound very house-like. This is without. This is with. I hope group is clear. If you're a beginner, it's normal in Ableton to just go crazy and you wanna fill this with stuff, and suddenly you hear this 5 minutes later and you're like, I don't understand why this sounds bad. What went wrong? Okay, you added too much stuff. This is simple, but it works. If we want to add more stuff, duplicate this loop with this button. Just do a variation on the second part of this loop now, because this loop is twice as long. It makes it feel like it's the same loop, but more fresh. You're gonna see what I mean. Let's add like a snare. Just that detail makes it flow a lot better. But we can do this again. We can duplicate again, and it's going to be even fresher because we can do another variation like. that makes it so much more satisfying, and it's so easy to make. It literally took me 13 seconds. Don't overcomplicate it. I don't have to go crazy on everything. I'm going to work on a synth part, I think, because for me at least it's easier to come up with a synth part and then come up with a bass for that instead of doing it the other way. I can do an amazing bass line for this, but then I'm going to struggle finding chords or melodies that fit on that bass line scale because I lack music theory knowledge. Disclaimer, I am not advocating for not studying music. If you can do it, it's going to help you a lot. So before, when I was looking for drum samples and stuff, I also looked for house chord. This one is very nice too. I just don't know which one to use. I like this one a lot. I placed an instrument rack for this synth. You can use sampler, simpler, whatever you want. I'm using instrument rack and I'm just throwing the sample in there. If you know, they have 3 different modes of sampling. For this chord, we want to do the one shot, which means when you play the sample, it plays the entirety of the sample, but we can make it a little bit shorter and do a little fade out so it's more smooth, maybe even shorter. And that was with 171 milliseconds of latency. This is decent, it's not perfect, we don't need to overcomplicate it. Now, we can add the same groove to this clip. You see what I did there? I just grabbed the groove from the drums, I just dragged that into our new chord clip. Just drop it there. It's not as noticeable as the drums because the drums are like punching everywhere, but it's a good way to maintain the same swing for all of the elements. Let's look for that bass then. I'm gonna use an overdrive here on the lows, but I'm gonna lower the dry wet. I'm just amplifying that low frequency without actually getting it to distort. The bass just gets a little bit bigger because this sample lacks a little bit of that. So I'm straight up copying these chords and pasting in the bass. Now these 2 samples are probably in different keys, so this chord sounds like this and this bass sounds like... yeah, it doesn't work. I'm going to work on the bass line. Just remember that the bass is also a very percussive part, and that is the case on a lot of music genres. But in house music, the bass is going to make us dance along with the percussion, everything together, right? But the bass is so important because if we have the bass doing exactly the same as the chords, it can be okay, but it's going to be boring. We want to have a little bit of a bass line going on. I am going to add the groove to the bass. You see that it's playing with the chords. It's like... house music comes from sampled disco records. And what is prominent in disco music? Funky bass lines. Funky bass line that go pop, 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 octave up, octave down, short notes, long notes like pam, 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 pam. It's like a playful bass, and that's why I forgot to say with the sample of the bass I am not using the one-shot mode. If you remember, I said before one shot means I play and the sample is going to play entirely, but in classic mode the note is going to play as long as I'm pressing the key. So if I just stop pressing quickly, the note just follows my pressing. Then I did this octave up. This was like this. I did an octave up. I kind of struggle with this bass line, but I'm gonna go with it because one big part of music production is stick with it and go. If it doesn't work, you can always come back later and change it. Vocals are like a huge part of house music, but they can be like kind of corny sometimes. I don't know, maybe it's just me. In this case, this loop just works gracefully. Okay, now I'm going to try to come up with what it could be like a bridge. It's not gonna be exactly a bridge though. I'm going to add a bass to this. Okay, so for the second part, I made like a change. I just added the drums again. I made them like this. So it fits better with this new pattern. The drums before were like this, like continuous. I'm gonna take all of this to arrangement view. So this is what we have. So I'm gonna start organizing this. I'm gonna make a simple intro. Okay, this is our intro. And right here, we are gonna bring the hi-hats, but without the open hat. With the claps. Okay, like that. Now, this is gonna be twice as long, because the first part is gonna be without these vocals and the second part with these vocals. Now after this we're gonna bring that change that we made, make it twice as long, and then we're gonna bring the change but with the new drums. So one cool way to bring this vocal and make it make sense, because it comes kind of out of nowhere, is drag this a little bit back and like introduce it like to the track, like hello, I'm here and I'm about to start. So we can do that by removing some parts, not everything maybe, but like the synth maybe. You see how cool that sounds? So now I'm gonna make here, because the vocal disappears in this like bridge super fast, and I wanna make it more present in a way. What I'm gonna do is duplicate the time, like make it stretch. Okay, let's make this bridge twice as long so we have time to develop like a build-up. Now is a great time to play with automations. For example, reverb on this vocal. We just turn it on here because I don't want it before, but in this case, we are gonna turn on the dry wet like all the way up until here. But we are also gonna do that with the decay. So the decay going up. So I think we just take out the claps here. So we can turn off the reverb here and like try to bring the start of this drum, maybe like copy. So we take this out, so we leave some of that reverb develop before we cut it here. So it's like we are gonna do a little thing, group these three, which is what is sounding here, and we're gonna add a filter that it's only turned on in this part, like this, make it high pass. Maybe an automation, like very subtle. And the last thing I did is bring back the first part here at the end, so we like get some little closure, although the track is like 1 minute. This is the final result. I made this in 1 hour, so imagine if you spend a lot of time on this and work on the details and stuff. I am sure you can come up with something a lot better than this. And important, as you saw, all of the samples I use are from samplefocus.com. So check them out if you really need samples. It's free. You get credits every week to download samples. If you run out of credits, you get more by uploading your own samples. Hope you like this song. If you have any suggestion for me, leave it in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.